I was overjoyed when my family surprised me with a graduation party, feeling proud of my achievement, until I opened the cake box and saw the words "Congratulations, loser" written in bold icing. My parents burst into laughter like it was some harmless joke, but to me, it was anything but funny. Without a word, I stood up, grabbed my things, and walked out, though not before doing something that left them speechless. 3 weeks later, they called me in a panic because, for the first time in my life, I thought my parents were actually proud of me. I walked into the house and found it transformed, blue and silver streamers, a giant congratulations banner stretched across the living room, and real decorations everywhere. Family, neighbors, and even some of Dad's work buddies were gathered. There was actual food on the table, not just a box of takeout tossed on as an afterthought. I had never seen them do this for me. With Jake, it was different. When he got into college, they threw him an extravagant celebration, inviting all his friends and even gifting him a brand new laptop. Even when he flunked out a year later, they acted like nothing was wrong, never raising their voices. But for me, there had been no recognition, no celebrations. I was always the responsible one, the one who didn't need attention. That was the message every time I achieved something. And yet here I was, in a room decorated solely for me. My mom pulled me into a warm hug, her smile genuine. "We're so proud of you, honey," she said in a soft, affectionate tone. This was a huge moment. I blinked, unsure how to respond. For years, I had suppressed the pain of never feeling good enough for them. Now, maybe things were finally shifting. Maybe I had accomplished something they could truly be proud of. My dad clapped me on the back and laughed, "First college grad in the family, huh? Look at you." I grinned, letting myself believe that maybe they finally saw me as more than an afterthought. I caught sight of my brother in the corner, absorbed in his phone, completely disinterested, just his usual self, but that didn't matter today. Today was mine. A drink was handed to me, a toast was made. People congratulated me, shaking my hand and asking about my future. I was on cloud nine. Then they brought out the cake, a large, fancy cake, the kind you'd order in advance from a real bakery. My mom carried it in with a proud smile and set it right in front of me. My dad grinned and nodded toward it. "Go on, take a look." I leaned in, still smiling and soaking in the moment, until I read the words, "Congratulations, loser." My stomach dropped like I'd been sucker punched. I thought, this can't be right. It must be a mistake. Then the laughter started. It began with my dad, a soft chuckle that quickly turned into full-blown laughter as if it were the best joke ever. My mom laughed too, trying to hide it behind her hand, and Jake was practically dying, clutching his stomach. "Oh, come on, Ryan," my dad said when he saw my face. "It's just a joke." Jake smirked. "Damn, Ryan, don't act so shocked. You know it's funny." I felt like a complete idiot. Of course this wasn't real. Of course they weren't proud of me. Why would they be? I scanned the room, some people looked uncomfortable, exchanging uneasy glances, but no one said a word. No one stood up for me. I swallowed the rising nausea and forced myself to remain composed. To them, I was just a joke. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. It wasn't the anger they expected, nor was it deep sadness, it was sharper, clearer. I slowly picked up the glass in my hand and raised it deliberately. The room quieted as everyone watched, waiting for my reaction. I smiled softly and said, "I appreciate the effort. I'll never forget the thought and care put into this." The silence stretched on. My mom shifted uncomfortably, and my dad's smile faltered. "To the future," I continued, lifting my glass a bit higher, "because I've finally learned to treat you the way you've always treated me." No one spoke. I held their gazes just a moment longer, letting the tension settle, then downed my drink in one swift gulp. I carefully set the glass on the table and turned toward the door. I grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked out. As I glanced back, I noticed Jake watching me, his confident smirk faltering. My dad cleared his throat. "Oh, come on, Ryan, don't be dramatic. It's just a..." Jake interrupted with a smirk. "Oh, and one more thing, don't worry, you'll figure it out soon enough." Then I walked out. No yelling, no dramatic outbursts, no tears, just a heavy silence that followed me as I left. I didn't need to see their faces to know that confusion was starting to set in. They were trying to brush it off, convincing themselves I was just being overly sensitive, that I'd get over it, that I'd eventually come back. They had no idea what was coming next. They would soon learn I was never the son they wanted. From the day we were kids, Jake was always the one they adored, the golden child, the favorite, the one they celebrated, defended, and showered with second, third, even fourth chances, no matter how many mistakes he made. And me? I was simply tolerated. I used to wonder why. What did he have that I didn't? I worked hard, got good grades, and stayed out of trouble. I did everything right, yet I was always dismissed. It started when I was 6. I won a school spelling bee and came home beaming with my certificate, hoping for praise. Instead, that same day, Jake had drawn some scribbles on a piece of paper, and my mom couldn't stop gushing over it. She put it on the fridge and called him her little artist. My dad ruffled his hair, praising his talent, then glanced at my certificate with disinterest. Spelling isn't a real skill, he remarked. My mom gave me a distracted smile. Oh honey, that's nice, but don't get too cocky. I wasn't bragging, I just wanted them to notice me. By the time I was 10, I stopped trying altogether. Meanwhile, Jake got away with everything. If he got in trouble at school, the teacher was unfair. If he broke something at home, it was just an accident. If he got bad grades, it was because not everyone can be a nerd like me. Rolling my eyes was seen as disrespectful, asking for something was viewed as ungrateful. And when Jake got into college, they threw him a massive party, while when I did, Dad barely looked up from his phone. I told myself I didn't need their approval. Yet a small part of me still hoped that if I just kept my head down, worked hard, and proved myself, one day they'd finally be proud. And when college came, I knew better than to expect help with tuition. I never even asked. I earned a scholarship, took out loans, and worked part-time to cover what I could. Jake barely scraped through high school, and yet when he enrolled in a mediocre college, my parents were overjoyed. We'll support you with whatever you need, my mom had told him, and they did. They paid his tuition, bought him a car, and sent money every month. Jake partied through his freshman year, skipping classes and barely passing exams, and by sophomore year, he had completely flunked out. Despite this, my parents never got angry or blamed him, they actually pitied him. It was too much pressure, my mom said, shaking her head. Maybe we pushed him too hard. They gave him everything he needed, but the real blow, the one that finally broke something inside me, came when they began planning his second chance. They found another college, made calls, pulled strings to get him in again, and told him this time would be different. They promised to support him, pay for what he needed, even secure an apartment close to campus. Then they informed me I'd be co-signing his lease, as if it were a done deal, as if it were my sole duty to ensure Jake had a place to live for his second chance. You have good credit, my dad had said. It won't cost you anything, it's just a signature. I should have said no, but I didn't. I was so used to fulfilling their expectations that the words left my mouth before I even thought. Yeah, fine, I mumbled, barely acknowledged as just another task I was expected to handle. Jake didn't thank me or even acknowledge what I was doing for him, and that was when I realized it would never end. No matter what I did, I would never be enough for them. I could have walked on the moon, and my dad would have just shrugged, my mom would have given a polite smile, and Jake would have cracked a joke about how I was overdoing it. It wasn't that they didn't see me, it was that they simply didn't care. Then came the graduation party. I walked in, saw the decorations, the banner, and my mom's forced smile along with my dad's handshake. For a moment, I hoped that maybe this time they were proud. But when they handed me that cake and laughed, I realized they would never respect me. And that night, I decided I was done being used. I left the party, but not before making one final call, the one thing they never expected. I made sure that in 3 weeks, they'd be the ones calling me, desperate and pleading, realizing they'd finally pushed me too far. For 3 weeks, I let their calls go unanswered. At first, I ignored them, not entirely out of spite, though maybe a little, but mostly because I no longer cared. I'd spent years scrambling to meet their demands, always bending over backwards to prove my worth to people who never truly cared about me. So when the missed calls piled up, my mom leaving one voicemail after another, Jake's texts shifting from "dude, WTF, to you need to fix this," I let them sit. I already knew why they were calling, and the longer I ignored them, the worse it became. Mom started with a concerned tone, "Honey, something's off with Jake's apartment. Can you call me?" Then came the faint confusion, "Ryan, did you forget something? The landlord told us you're no longer listed as his cosigner." Next, my dad's angry voicemails, "What the hell did you do? You gave your word. Fix it now, call me back." And finally, Jake's message, no pretense of concern, just straight up rage, "You screwed me over. Fix this now." I couldn't help but smile when I read that last one. 3 weeks earlier, I'd left that party with one last task on my mind. I went straight to my car, grabbed my phone, and called the landlord's office. I had officially withdrawn as a cosigner. Just like that, Jake's lease was null and void, and now he was about to find out the hard way. They had all assumed it was a done deal because I'd always done as they said without question or resistance. They still thought I was that same obedient person, but the moment I saw that cake, I knew I was done being their doormat. Now, for the first time, they were facing real consequences, and it felt amazing. On day 22, I answered my dad's call after letting it ring twice, then waited for the inevitable explosion. It wasn't long before he erupted, What the hell did you do? I pulled the phone away slightly, listening as he ranted. You made a commitment, you gave your word, and now your brother's lease is about to fall through. Fix it now. I said nothing, no arguments, no explanations, just let him vent until he eventually fell silent. Then his tone shifted to that low, dangerous voice he used when he wanted to make me feel guilty. You need to be a man and take responsibility. That almost made me laugh. Responsibility? Where was that talk when Jake failed out of school, when he squandered all the money they threw at him, when he spent his whole life skating by with excuses? I exhaled slowly and finally replied, calm and steady, I don't think I will. I could almost hear the disbelief crackling over the line as I repeated it. The silence stretched, then suddenly, you selfish little, he began, and I hung up. He called back immediately, I let it ring. Then Jake called, I ignored him too. Finally, my mom called, and this time I picked up because I already knew how it was going to go. She started softly, sweetheart, we need to talk. I hummed, unimpressed. Talk about what? I replied. She sighed as if I were being unreasonable. I know you're upset, we all know that party didn't go the way you wanted. I scoffed, is that what we're calling it, a party? She didn't pick up my sarcasm, but then she said, this is serious, Ryan. Your brother's future is on the line. His future? When had they ever cared about mine? I'd clawed my way through school without their help, worked myself to the bone, taken on loans, and where were they when Jake needed support? And now they expected me to sacrifice for him too. I kept my voice measured, I think Jake will figure something out. She bristled, you know he can't get approved on his own. Sounds like it's a problem, Ryan. She tried once more. A little sharper now, this is what family does. I said it, and my voice finally ran out of patience. I'd done this for years, and what did I get in return? A cake that read congratulations, loser. Then came silence. The first real silence ever. I let it hang there, let it settle, and then softly said, now you're realizing what a huge mistake that was. Her breath caught. It had all been a joke, I smiled. Then I hung up. I stared at my phone for what felt like an eternity, half expecting another call, but nothing came. For the first time ever, they had nothing to say because they knew I meant it, they knew they'd finally pushed me too far. And the best part? This wasn't even the end. They still hadn't figured out just how badly they'd messed up, and soon enough they'd be calling again, begging for mercy, because I had done more than just cancel a cosign, I had walked away from it all. Without me, their golden boy was about to lose everything. They didn't call for several days. I wasn't surprised, Dad was probably ranting about how ungrateful I was, Mom likely crying. That I was tearing the family apart, and Jake sulking because, for once, he wasn't getting his way. But I knew it wasn't over, there was one more thing they hadn't grasped, and when they did, that's when real panic would begin. It didn't take long on a Friday evening. As I settled in with a beer and some peace, my phone buzzed. Jake. I smirked and let it ring. He called repeatedly, and by the fifth ring I finally answered, keeping my voice calm. I thought we were done here, came his frantic tone. What the hell did you do? I took a slow sip of beer. Be more specific. The money, Ryan, the tuition money, it's gone. There it was. I smiled because this was the moment they hadn't expected. It wasn't just the cosign I pulled out, it was every bit of financial help I'd given them over the years, covering small expenses, fixing missed payments, loaning money that was never repaid. And when they started planning Jake's second shot at college, they casually assumed I'd chip in. You're doing well now, Dad had said as if it were nothing. You should help your family. I hadn't agreed, but they took it for granted that I'd fall in line. So I did the one thing they never anticipated, I cut them off completely. The tuition deposit they expected from me never came, the payments I used to make on their behalf disappeared, and the quiet financial safety net I'd unknowingly provided vanished. Now they were drowning. Jake lost his apartment, and he was now losing his second chance at school, because without my money, without my help, without my credit, he had nothing. And I had never felt so free. Ryan, you don't understand, Jake kept babbling. The school called, they said the payment never went through. I don't have enough to cover it. I'm about to lose my spot. I let out a low hum. Damn, that sucks. A pause, then his voice sharpened. Fix it. That made me laugh, really laugh. It was astonishing how deep his entitlement ran. Even now, after everything, he still thought I owed him something. You're serious? I said, shaking my head. You said you'd help. He snapped back, no, I corrected you. You assumed I would. Big difference, he spluttered. Mom and Dad said you cut him off. Oh, I'm sure they did, but I don't care what they said. The silence stretched, then he tried another approach. Ryan, You know this is my last chance, right? There it was, the desperation, the realization that he was actually screwed. I leaned back, keeping my tone steady. Yeah, I know. He swallowed hard. So, you'll figure something out? That was the same thing my dad had always said when he drained my college fund, what they always said when I needed help, when I struggled, when I fought through life on my own. And now, they were about to get a taste of it too. Jake finally lost it. You're such a bitter piece of, you're doing this just to punish me? No, I said smoothly, I'm doing this because I've finally learned to treat you the way you treat me. I let that sink in, then hung up. The next day, it was Mom on the line. She was crying before I even said hello. Ryan, she sniffled, we need to talk. I sighed, no, we don't. Jake is going to lose his spot, she said, voice thick with tears. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. She took a deep breath. You're punishing all of us for a stupid joke. I smiled. No, Mom, I'm finally treating you exactly as you've always treated me. She gasped softly, and I could tell it hurt her. For the first time, I realized she wasn't just calling about Jake, she was calling for herself too. Without my financial support, they were struggling. All those little things I used to cover every time I bailed them out, now that I wasn't there, they were really feeling the consequences. You have to forgive us, Ryan, she pleaded. We're family. I let out a small, amused breath. Funny, you only say that when you need something. She hesitated. Ryan, please. I could hear genuine panic in her voice now. It wasn't just about Jake losing his second shot at school, this had shattered their whole way of life because I had walked away, because I wasn't coming back, because they had finally pushed me too far. I let the silence linger a bit longer before I finally said, I don't owe you anything. My voice was steady. Not anymore. And then, for the last time, I hung up. I never spoke to them again. They tried, of course, the calls went on for months with guilt trips, fake apologies, and pleas for one last favor. But I had made my choice, and for the first time in my life, I chose me. Jake never went back to school, the deposit deadline passed and he lost his spot. My parents couldn't come up with the money in time, and having burned through all their resources trying to support him, there was no backup plan. I later heard from a relative that he had to move back home, stuck under the same roof as our parents, a grown man, a college dropout with no degree, no job, and no prospects. It was almost poetic. For years, I was the one they underestimated, ignored, and mocked, and now I was the one who walked away, leaving them behind.